This is Target Score Weekly with Joey Slattery and Taylor Allen. Welcome into episode 2 for season 2, Target Score Weekly. I'm Joey Slattery with Taylor Allen, coming off a pretty hot start, Tay, with cousin Teddy making his first appearance on the show since his re-signing, and people seem to be loving that, but that's just the sign of things to come, buddy.
Yeah, no kidding. I had a really fun chat with Commissioner Mike Morreale. And, you know, we brought back, of course, our favorite segment, Target Time, And we kind of asked them some tough questions. We kind of put them in a tough spot with a couple of those. But that was a lot of fun with Mike. You know, that's someone we've wanted on the show literally since day one. Just hasn't kind of worked out. So finally getting the Commissioner on, talking about the history of how the Sea Bears, you know, ended up becoming a team and why that kind of took a couple of seasons for that to happen and whatnot. And of course, had to talk some CFL football as well with him being a former receiver for the Argos and Ticats and a teammate with Mike O'Shea, head coach of the Blue Bombers. So we had some fun with that as well. So yeah, another good interview there, Joey.
Yeah, he never played here, but he definitely has his connections to Winnipeg for sure. And he's probably about the most personable commissioner you're going to find in pro sports. I mean, he's a pretty laid back guy. You know, we tossed him some pretty good questions, I'd like to think. And, you know, he gave us some pretty honest answers. So it was pretty good. So we'll get to that in a little bit. But Taylor, you've been a busy man. You've got, not only are you doing Target Score Weekly and doing all your prep for the season coming up for the CEBL, but this is championship season for curling. And some big news came in while we were recording this one.
Big news, to say the least. Jennifer Jones, you know, obviously the face of curling in Manitoba, face of curling in our country, you could even say, announced her retirement from women's curling. She'll still compete in mixed doubles with her husband, Brent Lang, moving forward. But this upcoming Scotties will be her last time competing at the Scotties. So, and I'm fortunate enough, I'll be there in Calgary in a couple weeks to be able to cover that. So that'll be really cool to see. So, yeah, I mean, that's a bombshell of a news. And obviously, I mean, that's something that we've talked with Jen about over the years. You know, when are you thinking of retiring and whatnot? But the thing is, she's going to be 50 soon, and she still is at the top of her game. She's still an elite athlete. She's still an elite curler. She has not slowed down whatsoever. So really for her, it's just, you know, wanting to spend more time with her kids and whatnot. But yeah, a legend retiring, one hell of a career. And we'll see what this final chapter is. I mean, if she could win the Scotties in Calgary, oh my goodness. Not many athletes get to finish their career on top, so we'll see what happens. So that'd be quite the story. And I said that to her, I was like, wow, that would be one heck of a way to go out. And she said, well, I'll do my best to make sure you can write that story. So I was like, oh, okay. So we shall see. So it should be cool to see for sure.
Yeah, that'd be incredible. I mean, what she's done for that sport, you know, you say like face of Canada. I would go as far as saying the most recognizable face and name in the sport for sure, even for people that don't follow it. So no, that's pretty cool that you get to go down there. You know, you talk about unique sports experiences. You know, those are some of the cool things we're afforded as sports journalists, is getting that front row seat and being able to tell that story. So I have to say, after, you know, years of covering curling, and this would be the time where I'd be at my busiest, you know, I'm a little upset that I'm not going to be there for the, you know, probably the biggest story in curling for, at least in the last, since I've been covering it, and probably for the foreseeable future until the next one happens. But yeah, no, it's awesome that you're able to do that and make the time for this. You know, we've been pumping out some interviews, and, you know, we're going to have a lot of fun content leading up to the season. So, you know, we're looking forward to that. But this one here, Tay, as you said, we've been looking forward to it for a while, you know, getting the commissioner of the league on here. He's got a unique story on how he got to where he is. You know, he's not the stereotypical commissioner of a guy who, you know, is a lawyer or whatever it is. I mean, this guy is a pro athlete who played at the highest level, a champion, who now finds himself in a position where he's leading a league, you know, not a team coaching where a lot of them end up coaching. So it's a very interesting conversation. I hope you guys enjoyed the interview as much as we enjoyed conducting it, because we had a great chat with him. Without any further ado, here's our conversation with CEBL Commissioner Mike Morreale. Commissioner, thank you for making time for the show. It's the first time we've had you on Target Score Weekly. We've been wanting to do it for a while, so we're glad to finally get you on, and we really appreciate your time today.
Oh, my pleasure. I love the name, Target Score. I can get behind that. That's a pretty cool handle you guys got going there.
I got to give that to Taylor though. That was Taylor's biggest contribution outside of actually doing the show for sure.
Is that
I don't know if that's a compliment or
compliment?
not. Yeah,
I'm gonna go ahead and say it is a compliment, because without a name, I don't think this show has the traction that it does. That's you've brought a lot of contributions. Didn't mean that as an undercut.
It came down to the wire too. It was like an hour before our first episode. We had I don't even remember what the name was. It wasn't a great name. Then this just kind of hit me, and then we're like, yeah, that's the one for sure. So, but really, Mike, you get the credit. I mean, because you guys made this a league with target score. So maybe we'll start there. I mean, obviously, the basketball purists, maybe they hear about this rule, they might be like, I don't know about that, but once you really kind of see it, in the works, and you're like, okay, like, yeah, makes it a lot more exciting. But what were those initial conversations like? Because obviously that was quite the plunge to, make such a drastic change to the end of the game.
Yeah, it was, again, we every decision you make, you want to make sure you don't make them just for the sake of making them. There's got to be a real reason behind it. And not being a basketball purist per se, I can look at the game a little bit differently. When I heard about target score, it was being used only in the TBT, which is the basketball tournament. It's been going on for about 6-7 years now. It's kind of a winner-take-all tournament. And, they were doing some different things. And it just caught my attention as to, I always, as a fan, hated the last part of basketball games when they just grind to a whole win, lose, or draw. It could be a major loss, a major win, big point differential, and then it just becomes terrible basketball to watch, and that's played on the court for the most part. It's a breaking of rules and all this other stuff. So how do you eliminate that? How do you condense, or make all the good stuff in basketball available to you? Is there a way to create a different ending that was created and adopt a different ending that allowed the game to flow more freely? And that ended in the majority of the times with some sort of made basket, and not without controversy at times, but that's part of basketball. I think that's part of playing sport. I mean, anytime there's a ball involved, anything can happen. But for us, it was an ability for us to condense our style of play within 2 hours, which is a great time for broadcast, but also a good time for our fans to be able to not be in an arena all day long, get in, get out. Games end on a winning bucket, win, lose, or draw. But what it's really been the big thing is no one leaves our games early. No one leaves our games early. It could be a 20-point lead, and there's still that fighting chance, whether you're a visitor or a home fan, to say anything can happen. And we've seen it. We saw Calgary come back a 17-point differential and beat Edmonton, and we've seen many of those in career, and we've seen some games end earlier that should end earlier rather than continue to draw. So there's a lot of benefits that come from it, but we're a disruptor brand. We want to look at different ways to do things, not because, again, we want to be hokey, but I think there is some rule changes like this one that make our game better and more exciting for the fans.
Kind of feels like baseball in that sense, the old Yogi Berra quote, "It ain't over till it's over."
Yep.
Right. And it does bring a different sense. I mean, even in games, you see some teams, struggling with it, closing out a game because you can't depend on the clock. And it's been interesting. That said, too, you're a former CFL player. The CFL has rules that makes it significantly different from the American game, right? And that's why we celebrate the game here in Canada and we enjoy it for what it is. How much of an influence does that have, too, in this terms of, you're taking this Canadian version of basketball, the Canadian game, really, and making it slightly different from where you see elsewhere? Was there any kind of influence there where you saw an opportunity to kind of make it a little different that might attract viewers even outside of Canada?
I think where the CFL influence comes is just my experience in the CFL as a player and as an executive, etc., and understanding the nuances of what works and what doesn't work from a Canadian point of view. Our desire to go to a target score was not really based on the CFL doing the rules or something like that and being different per se. So I've never looked at it in that respect, but I appreciate the Canadian game because of the differences. And I think you can appreciate the CBL game, certainly the finish of it, because of the differences. That really, again, doesn't make for worse basketball. It generally makes for a better style of play down those final 4 minutes of the game. So there was a lot of CFL influence. This one here was a bit of a stretch, and the question was, how did it go over the first early days? It was not. It was me, saying, "Hey, this is what we're going to do," and getting a lot of pushback. But the timing was there. We were just getting into COVID. We were going into our bubble season. So we were open to try different things. Like, there was nothing off the table at that point. We're just glad we're getting on a court. So that timing and the fact that it worked, and we saw some great results early and then built on that in 2021, and now it's a mainstay. And I can't see us doing anything different in it. What people don't understand is, because of these changes, which, are in some cases, if you're a purist, like huge and bizarre, and if you're an entertainment person, it's, great in other ways. There's a lot of back end stuff that has to happen to allow us to play target score. All of our data systems, everything that talks to, websites and apps, and, everything, the player statistics and all that stuff, all that technical stuff had to be created and built. Like, it doesn't exist. So when we're looking to trade our data from a betting perspective, there were no data companies in the world that could automate the target score ending. So we had to build it, and we worked with a partner to build it. And now we're the only league that has this automation built. And then now we take advantage of this automation to deliver it to betting houses, and even just, for straight statistics. So a lot of people don't understand that it wasn't an easy change from a basketball point of view, but it was from a business point of view. It involved us doing more to be able to make it work effectively, so we could actually expose this, worldwide, which is what we've been able to do.
That's interesting.
So when you did, you mentioned some of the kind of the backlash you got. So when you did first, bring up this idea, though, it wasn't a resounding yes. Like, there were some people going like, "No, this is crazy. Like, what are we doing here?" Or,
well, I think people didn't want it to be, like I said, that hokey version of it. Like, you have to keep the integrity of the game strong. What we just did was ask them to look differently at a way to finish the game, and that meant they had to coach differently. So I think a lot of it was initially was going against the norm, which is always difficult, but then asking our coaches and players and executives, etc., to now adopt a different strategy and a different way of coaching that they've never been exposed to before. So it also put them out on a limb, right, to try something different and to learn. And you'll notice over time that the majority of our coaches have adapted very well, but also some of them have become very, very good at that part of the game. It's an incredible part of that game, because it is that target score has the ability. Those 4 minutes can really change the outcome of a game, for the other 36 minutes. And it's not just the 4, it's how you lead into the 4. What's that fourth quarter like? Are you trying to build up that gap? Or are you trying to chip away if you're behind, because you want to get yourself into position that once the clock goes under 4 minutes, what's that first stoppage in play? Do you automatically foul? Do you let it go? Do you want the ball back? Do you not want the ball back? Do you want to get the timeout right away? There's a lot of those things that these coaches had no idea how to do, because it's really never been done. So all that combined, anytime something's new, it's going to get like, oh, like, we're a little bit nervous, but you have to kind of give it a shot and prove it. And we proved it. And I think it's not universally loved, but I think that the majority is there, and then some. And there's going to always be people that hate everything about everything. That's just how they wake up in the morning. So I don't worry about that.
Yeah, well, even talking with the players throughout the season last year, really getting a chance to talk to many of them as they came through Winnipeg, it seems like it's popular among the players. The thing I like about it is it kind of gives you an idea of these players and how they perform in the clutch, because there is that clutch moment every game. You have to hit that winning shot, right? I mean, even here in Winnipeg, you look at Jelani Watson-Gale was a guy last year who had a number of them and earned his nickname, the closer, right? Which just doesn't happen in another league unless you're in overtime or having, a weird amount of overtime games that come down to the last shot or fourth quarter last shot games and things like that. But for you yourself, I mean, you are a former CFL player. Did you ever think that you would be a commissioner of a league, even outside of football? And how does that kind of come about? How does this opportunity come about that Mike Morreale is the commissioner of a professional sports league?
Well, it's a question of kind of being in the right place at the right time, and all of your body of work like accumulating to the point where it makes sense to, okay, this is the right person. This guy could lead this opportunity. So, my CFL days were formative across the board. They just really made me who I am and allowed me to do this job. Have I ever envisioned being the commissioner of the CFL? Absolutely. I mean, I grew up as a CFL fan. I mean, I didn't grow up wanting to be commissioner. I'll tell you that. I grew up wanting to be on the field. But as I got into the business, I was really intrigued by the inner workings of domestic sport and the CFL specifically. And I always wanted to be involved and never on the coaching side. It just didn't interest me. I just thought, okay, how do we make the game better? Outside of basketball or part of, so there you go. I'm throwing basketball outside of football. How do you make the game better? And that opportunity just didn't present itself. It's timing. It's where you are at a certain point in your life and where they are and so on and so forth. But that desire to be involved on the business side, I thought had gone away because really outside of the CFL, there was no other domestic sports league in Canada, right? Professionally, everyone else has got a head office or a league office of the U.S. and with the NHL and NBA, MLB, etc. So it was just a chance meeting with Richard Petco, who was the original founder, and he had this idea. He knew me from the CFL, so the CFL connections run deep because he knew me as a Toronto Argonaut, and that doesn't really happen a lot on this side of the world, certainly in Hamilton. So he had a desire to build a league like we built and play when we play and play FIBA rules and to mimic what happens all over the world outside of North America for domestic leagues. And I felt like I could help him get there. I didn't know what the hell I was doing in terms of the basketball side. I just knew what worked or what didn't work based on my experience for 20 plus years in and around the CFL. And that really helped me paint the picture of where I think we can go. And, just trying new things and daring to be different and having an owner at that time, a single owner, that allowed me to make those decisions unilaterally. So that got us to where we are now. And then the addition of the private ownership groups that have come on over the last couple of years have allowed us now to invest further into the league and, of course, into those markets. And you've seen what's happened in Winnipeg and what David's been able to do by being that person, that community leader and active in the market. It pays dividends. And that's where the CBL is going. And it's been a journey to get there.
Mike, we know what you could do as a football player. Obviously, Grey Cup champion with your hometown Ticats, Grey Cup champion with the Argos as a receiver. But as a basketball player back in your heyday, maybe what could you do on the basketball court?
Wasn't much of a heyday, but no, I was a huge basketball fan. I grew up. I played a lot of soccer, so but we used to play pickup basketball, me and my buddies, every day. And I had a park behind me. We'd go play. And when we went to high school, I played basketball. And I was a pretty decent player. I had zero touch. But if you wanted to rebound, I'd grease up these elbows and sharpen them up. And I don't think, I would guess that 90% of the games I played in, I would have fouled out. That was just the way I played basketball. I played basketball like I played football. But I really enjoyed the sport. And I was in a minority, right? It was me and my buddies playing. It wasn't like the same pickup games you get now and the playgrounds and the nets in front of people's houses. It really didn't exist going back, for me, 40 years ago, 30 something years ago. So, seeing what's happened now and being part of basketball now under this new, trajectory of basketball has really been encouraging because I see a lot of parallels to the CFL, right? And it's not me as a kid sitting in the stands watching Rocky DiPietro and Grover Covington, et cetera. It's a young boy or girl sitting in the stands watching Teddy Allen or watching Chad Posthumous, right? And having that connection. So that's really what's important to me because I knew what that drove me to get onto that court or want to be there, want to follow the league. So replicating that was the biggest first step to do it. And I knew the basketball would come. Like I knew that the game would take care of itself. It's just how do we get this in front of, Canadian consumers and fans that haven't had this ever. And now it's their time to rally behind it.
How does that, your unique makeup of, being a professional athlete in Canada, a fan of basketball, and, with the business acumen you've accumulated throughout, since that playing time, how has that, I guess, been a benefit to you as a commissioner when you take in specifically the experience as a professional athlete here in Canada and then being a fan of the game?
Well, it really gives me a very good understanding of a player and what a player wants and what a player needs to be successful. So I always have a lens on how is this going to affect the player, both positively and negatively, in all the decisions we make. And we have to run a business, but at the same time, your biggest assets are the guys on the court. So I think I have a very good understanding of that, not just as a player, but as I became president of the Player Association, I saw another side to the business that maybe wasn't as pretty, right? With people struggling or things that players needed off the court. So being cognizant of that and also understanding the financial realities of the team or the league you're playing in. I can tell looking back, there was times I was ruthless, against my team or the CFL for why are we getting this and why aren't we getting that and why aren't we getting this and we deserve this, going into collective bargaining agreements and all that stuff. And then sometimes you actually got to figure out, okay, this is the reality of the situation. So it's not all as rosy as you think. And we deal with it too. There's a lot of upward trajectory in the CEBL. Does that mean that every team is flush with cash? No, we're still building a league. But optically, players see that and they want to participate in that growth and that upside. So we're doing things this year to expand our salary cap, to increase the per game pay on average for all players by adopting certain rules from a roster set of rules that allow certain players to play that are outside of the cap, which will open up more money for players under the cap. So, we recognize that, but that's all, based on ensuring that the players continue to want to come here. And because when they come here, they thrive. And I think that's been the great thing is that we've created a pathway that didn't exist. That pathway has been ultimately very successful, and it's been able to attract recurring players, but also new players to the CBL because they see that pathway in action, and it works.
Mike, I think the first time we spoke was after the first CEBL draft when you guys first were starting this league. A couple Winnipeg guys were picked. Basically, it's just an excuse for me to talk to you and say, hey,
I remember
why the heck
that. That's Winnipeg back a long time.
Yeah, it's been a couple of years now. Yeah, it's basically just an excuse for me to say, hey, why the heck does Winnipeg not have a team in this league? And I was very impressed. Like you knew all about Winnipeg's basketball scene or Filipino community, like how popular the game is in Winnipeg. But unfortunately, it's just kind of a bit of an awkward fit because, we have the Canada Life Center, what it's called now, the big arena. We just don't have that medium size arena. Right. So it would kind of take quite the plunge. So obviously throughout the years, you had these conversations with people and looked at venues and whatnot, and obviously it's worked out now with the Sea Bears, although I'm sure lots of people were, yourself included, and David Asper especially, were kind of nervous if it was going to work out with such a big venue like that. But along the way, were there times where like, as great as it would be to be in Winnipeg, as much as we want to be in Winnipeg, I just don't think this is going to work just based off of, just the venues that they have or lack thereof?
Oh, that was certainly a huge challenge, both venue related, but also who's our local champion, right? Because I think we've realized at that point, as a league under single ownership, we had operated 8 or 9 teams independently, and we knew the challenges of operating from a distance and the local group in market. So thinking of expanding in and the amount of work that was being done at league office, could we do it alone, and would we be able to do it as well as a local person would? I had some reservations about that. But when David came on board, I knew what I was getting in David. I knew exactly what he brought to the table. And, we had started looking at, what a team would look like there and where they would play. And Canada Life Center was not the number one choice, not because we didn't want to play there, because it was a major risk, right? It's a big, big building. There's obviously financial implications of going into a big building and dealing with another, private entity that operates the building. There's a lot of what ifs. And then we looked at the university, which would have been the second best, I guess, option because there is no mid-market arena. And then that has limitations, but we had to go down the path to figure it out. And we just got fortunate because of David's relationship with the people at True North, obviously, in the community, that conversation opened about getting into Canada Life. And then it became, okay, then you start to sweat because that's a jump. You're going from U of M to Canada Life Center is a jump. But we believed in it. And the CBL had a lot of good footing at that time. We were, reorganizing ourselves, and Guelph was moving to Calgary, and we're getting new owners in Vancouver and in Edmonton, and David's coming, and we got Cal. So you can start to see, okay, yeah, it's not going to be easy, but we have a really strong foundation from a league. So the league's not going anywhere. Can we make Winnipeg work? And we started, I was always bullish on it, as was David, of course, but I think we both wanted to be very conservative in our approach to what was going to happen, and it's been an uber success, and that is only going to grow. Their success to date, year over year, is incredible. So that trend is continuing, which is very, very encouraging. It puts more pressure on that team and the group to continue to grow and prosper, but that's what we want, right? We do believe that we can be a major market. Well, we know we can be a major market league, but we can play in major market facilities down the road. I do believe if with the right partnerships or ownership situations and access to buildings in some of those major markets, you'll see it, which is why we're playing our opener this year at the Saddle Dome in Calgary. So that is another step in that direction. And, in a perfect world, we build our own arenas, right? And that's really where we would like to get. That's where I would like to get to in that mid to long-term view, is to replicate the investments that municipalities and governments have made in, hockey, and expand that to other indoor sports, right? We don't want to play on ice anymore. No offense. Like, playing in an arena sucks. It's not the proper setup. It's not that the sight lanes aren't the same. So, that's going to be my push. And I think with the changing dynamics and demographics of the country and the people that are now going to be, making people make the right decisions, hopefully some of these decisions get made in the future. But that's for future discussion. Where we are now is we're continuing to grow and prosper, and we got a lot of things to obviously get better internally too. It's part of the game of growing.
What's the ceiling for this league, Mike? When you take into account, I know from the get-go, you talked about the importance of being in major Canadian markets, and you saw slight changes even going from, Fraser Valley to Vancouver Bandits, really putting the major market cities on there. But when you take into account this experience in Winnipeg, as you touched on already, getting into the NHL arena, now you're seeing Calgary testing the waters. I've heard Edmonton might test the waters as well, and playing at a bigger arena and seeing what the capacity is and, really getting a feel for what your attendance can be. But with everything you've learned through this process, what is the ceiling for this, and what can you apply from what you've learned so far to maybe, bring those expectations up even in other markets, maybe markets that are struggling to get the fans that we're seeing in some of the markets here out west?
Well, I think that's it, right? As much as we want to continue to grow and everything's shiny and we got to get to these big markets and big arenas, we have to take care of our own, right? We have to ensure that there's parity in the league and that teams are not always chasing other teams, that they're evening out and things are getting better. And a lot of that comes with the local owners. That really does help. And it comes with being in a community a little bit longer, getting buy-in from the municipality and the fan bases and the community businesses to say, okay, becomes a fabric of the community. We're not a league that your parents grew up and watched, right? And they're passing it down to their younger generation. So we're creating fans, and there's fan retention things we have to continue to look at, and our fan retention is excellent. We want to keep it, in the 90 percentile. And then investments, right? What do we do outside of the CBL season to continue to have our fans engaged? What does the off season look like? What can we do locally? What can we do nationally? What could we do internationally? And I think, I'm always trying to look several steps ahead is, okay, where can we collaborate? What other leagues, can we work with? Can we continue to forge relationships with the G League and the NBA? I think we are a league that makes a lot of sense for other teams and leagues to look at, to want to be a part of, or want to compete against, or recognize us for the talent that's on the court, and maybe there's player sharing and coach opportunities. And so those are the kind of where I see the future, outside of just continue to grow our games in our markets, is okay, where do we go exponentially? And it's going to take, in some cases, investment, and in many cases, just more collaboration and partnerships with other similar leagues, or individuals or businesses that want to see us grow.
Mike, so the Blue Bombers is one of my main beats here with the Winnipeg Free Press. And I believe you know the head coach pretty well, Mike O'Shea,
been around the block
teammate
with him. Yeah.
yeah. He's a fascinating individual to be around almost every day. He's obviously a player's coach. The guys all love to play with him. He obviously doesn't exactly love having to do media every day. We'll put it that way. But what's maybe, when you think of Mike O'Shea, what's maybe your favorite memory playing alongside him? Obviously, he's a very passionate guy on the field and whatnot. But what's something that you kind of think about when you think about your days on the gridiron with Mike?
I love Mike O'Shea. I'd go to battle with Mike O'Shea anytime, anywhere, any day. I'd like to be behind him, because they're out the way for just about anybody. I'd love seeing the success of the Bombers. I believe it's tied, almost entirely to Mike's approach to the game. And I know from the outside, meaning media, etc., it's tough to get into that because he holds it very sacred. But he holds it sacred because he's protecting the guys. Like, he's really all about ensuring that the locker room, and he's blessed to have Kyle there, and Danny, and all these guys that I are friends of mine too, and we played with over the years. So he will be the first one or the last one that goes down with the ship, right? He's going to ensure that he protects the sanctity of that locker room. He knows how important locker rooms are, and he knows how important it is to lead by example. Mike was the guy that played every snap on defense, and then played every single special team, sometimes without ACLs, sometimes with no elbow that he's blown out. Like, he didn't have I would say, an easy career when it came to injuries, etc. But it didn't stop him. So he's got an old school mentality, right? The CFL is very, very, very important to him. The cultural identity of the CFL. And I know when those special moments come, whether they're Grey Cups or whether they're, any sort of significant day in the year, Remembrance Day, etc. Like, there's a passion that exists in Mike O'Shea that not a lot of people have. And he's a valuable asset to that community. And I know sometimes he's a pain in the neck, but but if you're his teammate or he's your coach, I think you'd probably run through any wall for him. That's just the way he is.
So if Mike O'Shea steps off the field and onto the hard court and coaches a basketball team, does he replicate that success, and what kind of style is that team playing?
That's a great question. I mean, he would be the first to probably not sleep at night saying, I don't understand a damn thing about basketball. How the hell am I going to do this? That's just, he would look at himself first. But, if I look at Mike Taylor and I look at Mike O'Shea, they're different yet very similar. They're both players, coaches. Mike is far more engaging to the media, as you guys know, and that's the way he is. But fundamentally, they really value kind of the positivity, the teamwork, the working together, the locker room. And one of the best things that I saw last year was, I got Mike out to a game. He came with 3 minutes left in the game. He was out at the office doing his thing, coming back from a road trip, and he came out, and we went out after, and he had a time to sit down and chat with Mike Taylor. So just having Mike Taylor and Mike O'Shea and myself just kind of there and listening to them talk about coaching, right? So the game didn't matter. It was just about coaching and players, and that was really fun to listen to, because I think fundamentally they think very similar. Mike's style of play would be far more aggressive, I think, than certainly on the rebounding side of things than Mike Taylor. But I think you guys are blessed to have at least those two, and sorry, I don't follow all the teams in Winnipeg, but those two coaches in that market, I think you guys are really blessed and lucky.
I have to say, we have a pretty strong sports market all around here in Winnipeg. Gets a lot of support, a lot of good community leaders and the coaches and that. A lot of mics in this conversation too. I'm coming to understand. We got a lot of Allens and a lot of mics, I feel, on the podcast, Taylor.
Yeah,
this is becoming a thing. Well,
a few Taylors too.
Yeah, right. We've got Taylors. Jeez, it's getting too confusing. Taylor, you think it's time for target time?
Let's do it.
Now, we talked about it a little bit, Mike, with the Canadian games and the differences. Now, in order to save the world, you got to make this one decision. You either have to abandon target time and go to regular basketball in terms of the end of the game, or you have to add a fourth down in the CFL. Which one do you go with?
Oh, Lord. Oh, wow.
Coming in with the heat real quick, Mike.
I will say this, and I've never said this before. I never thought I would say it, but I actually believe that I would go to a fourth down.
Yeah?
Wow. Mike O'Shea's not going to like that answer, Mike.
No, he's not going to like that answer at all.
I tend to agree.
I'm looking at this much differently now, right? From I'm not looking at, if I was looking at a player, then it may have a different answer, but I look at it from just the bigger picture, and oh my goodness, I can't believe I said that. But yeah, that's a good question, because that's a push and pull. I don't want to give up any, quite frankly, but I work with one, so I'm just going to go the other direction.
Good stuff. I like
that's
the
fair.
answer.
That's fair. You also played receiver, so I get the appeal to four downs as well. So that's fair. You got an out on that one, I'd say. Favorite basketball player of all time?
Oh, Michael Jordan. Not even close.
Okay.
Not even close.
It might be Shea Gilgeous-Alexander pretty soon.
I hope one day
Hamilton boy.
I hope one day that one of the greatest guys and a proud Hamiltonian. Yes, I hope one day.
Was the Bulls your team too then?
Bulls was my team. I've been to Chicago. I've been to the old arena. I've watched the games there. So, but I'm of that vintage, right? I think people, I'm 52, so people who grew up in that vintage, that was Jordan time. I respect all the other players, but Jordan was the man.
I hear you on that. I think everybody would agree. Well, almost everybody would agree. Now, going back to your football playing days, Mike, there's a lot of good quarterbacks that played during that era.
Yep.
Who's a quarterback that you've not played with, but would have liked the opportunity to play with?
Oh, wow. I've been so blessed. I've played with so many good quarterbacks. I would say someone like Dave Dickinson or Jeff Garcia. I would have liked to play with one of those guys. I like
what is it about them?
The two different players. Dave reminds me a bit of Danny Mac, and Danny Mac to me was the best receiver I played with. We just had a very good symbiotic relationship, and Jeff was a bit of a run and gun, sling it, shoot it. Like, I just liked his style of play, but very, very intelligent, and those packages don't come along too often, which is why he went to the NFL after.
If you could meet any commissioner from any league, past or current, and sit down, have a drink, kind of pick their brain and whatnot, who would it be and why? I've
heard, I have some colleagues here that have worked with David Stern, and I just, the way he took control of the NBA, and how headstrong he was, sometimes bad, sometimes good. I have a lot of respect for the fact that he was able to move his agenda forward, and that agenda proved to be right. The NBA is experiencing huge growth, and it's all because of the decisions that Stern would have made throughout his career. And again, I'm not judging him as a man, because there's some people that just despise them and other people that love them, but I respect that he was able to create what he's created now, a legacy with the NBA.
Now, sticking with the commissioner subject, now that you've been a commissioner for a number of years, do you think is the biggest misconception to the general public when it comes to the commissioner role?
Well, there's a couple things. I always get the same question. Hey, what do you do in the off season? Like, do you do that full time? I'm like, holy, yeah. This is when all the work gets done, right? I think commissioners have different responsibilities in different leagues. Mine is pretty all-encompassing, which I think would be true for, the NFL and the NBA, where you're a commissioner, meaning you have one hat that manages the basketball and, discipline and all those things, the rules of the game. And that's probably the least fun part of my job, because there's a lot of stuff that goes on in competition, once the season starts. And then there's the vision part of my job, and that's more of the business CEO side. So I would effectively be like the commissioner/CEO, and that to me is important, that I have a lens on both. Even though I might give up some duties to our deputy commissioner on the basketball side, I still would have major decision making and influence on both sides. So I think the power of this position is pretty grand. You have to choose how to use it wisely, because I think it's important that you want to be able to lead and people follow you. But I think there might be a misunderstanding of the breadth that a commissioner role has. It's pretty all-encompassing, which in the hands of the wrong person, I guess, could be problematic. So hopefully, I can stick around and continue to grow this thing as long as I can and have it around for a long, long time.
Mike, what's going to happen first? The Hamilton Tiger Cats finally snap their Grey Cup drought, or the Canadian men's basketball team wins an Olympic gold medal?
Well, let's take into consideration that happens every 4 years on the Olympics. If it happened every year, I would go with the Olympic team. I've lost any way to kind of figure out why it's taken so long, right? Our team, this will be 25 years this year, so our last team in 1999 was the team that won. To think about a 9-team league, to not have a Grey Cup victory in that timeline is kind of inconceivable, to be honest with you. It's going to come, so I'm going to say the Ticats winning the Grey Cup. I hope to God, because we need to get over that hump. And as long as the men's team and the women's team do well, I think that will continue to help Canadian basketball. The Ticats need to win the Grey Cup to make sure that they continue on that trajectory that they're known for. So, fingers crossed, man. Fingers crossed.
They've had their opportunity, so at least they're getting there, right? So eventually they're going to break through the ice, and they're gonna claim that cup for sure. What's your favorite memory playing against the Bombers?
Ooh, I've had lots of good memories. One of the coolest plays I've ever been part of took place against the Bombers in Winnipeg in my rookie year in Toronto. And it was, now you got to remember, those games were on like Betamax, so I don't even know if this game exists anywhere. But it was the opening kick. It was freezing. It's not unheard of in Winnipeg. It was the opening kickoff of the second half, and we did a pooch kick. I think Terry Baker was the kicker. I was playing Toronto at the time. So he kicks off, does a pooch kick, and I'm one of the guys that's going down trying to, pick up the ball. Well, doesn't it hit the ground and bounce directly into my hands at full strength? So I take the ball and I head down. I think, I got a clear path to the end zone. I don't think I stretched coming out the locker room. It's like minus whatever. I can see I know I'm starting to get tense. The legs are locking up. And doesn't Milt Stiegel come over and tackle me? And he's the one that stops you from getting a touchdown. So Milt stopped me. Probably one of his only tackles. But I would have liked to complete that play. That would have been a hell of a play, but I think I took it down to the 5 or 6 yard line. But that was one of my memories, besides the mosquitoes and the cold weather.
The mosquitoes, yeah, true.
I was going to save this one for last, but since you just mentioned Milt Stiegel, perfect segue. Who would be on your Mount Rushmore of CFL receivers?
Ooh. And these are all guys I would have played with or played against. So just think about, my era when I played. Ben Cahoon, obviously Milt, G. Roy, Terry Vaughn, Mookie Mitchell, Daryl Mitchell, Darren Flutie. Oh my God. Fairholm. There's so many guys, Ray Elgard. Oh my God. Rocky DiPietro. So it's hard. It's almost like there's the Rockies and the Fairholms and the Elgards that I really admired because that was my game. And then there's the guys like Milton G. Roy and Darren that just could do stuff I couldn't do, and I always admired them for what they could do that I couldn't do, and vice versa. So my Rushmore would be pretty darn big. And when I look at, you know, the CFL Hall of Fame and the names, the receivers that are going up in that Hall of Fame, they are the cream of the crop. Just based on the time period that I played, you know, there's probably close to a dozen receivers that could be in that Hall of Fame one day, and some are already there.
All right. That was a tough one. That was a good question, Taylor. My last one, I'm going to circle it back to basketball, and I'll end with this one. As a commissioner, what's been your favorite moment so far?
I honest to God, the best part is what we've been able to create, and seeing the faces of kids and families and that participate in something that didn't exist before. Like the creation of the CEBL, in my mind, has been the best thing to happen to Canadian basketball in decades, because it's sustainable and it's attractive to fans and markets, and it helps to continue to grow and connect the ecosystem of basketball. And I think, you know, Winnipeg's a great example. They, you know, in reading those reports of growing year over year, you know, registrations by 20 some odd %, and then the CBR is contributing to almost all of that, you know, 80% of that growth, means that it's working, right? That I think is the most enjoyable. The wins and losses and the confetti falling is all kind of cool moments, but the actual being able to create something and knowing one day when I'm no longer, you know, in charge, that legacy will be there, hopefully into the future. Something is who are the guys that started the CFL 110 years ago? You know, what would they think today of what they created? And I'm sure it looked, and we all know it looked much different that long ago, but it's still here. Mm-hmm. That's what I want when I'm long gone, that somebody says, who the hell started this league, the CBL thing? Man, it's pretty cool. And, you know, at that point, who knows what it looks like? So that to me, that legacy part is most important.
I'll end with this. For those that don't know or need to be reminded, J. Cole, one of the most famous rappers in the world, played in the CEBL 2 seasons ago. So, Mike, what's your favorite J. Cole story or memory from that season that he played in the league?
Crazy, eh? Like, sometimes those things come up to him. Like, I see him on TV, I'll be like, hey, that guy played, eh? He just played in our league. You signed him to a contract, you know. I think watching the fandom, not just out at the outset where we had Ticketmaster crashing because we, you know, the selling out of tickets in Scarborough and all that stuff, to him rolling up to games. He always had his bodyguard with him, which was the nicest thing. It was the meanest looking guy I've ever seen. He's this guy. I always wondered what's in this where it's his chest. I want to find out. But he would, you know, he was there all the time with Jay, and Jay was just a normal dude. So meeting him for the first time was probably the coolest thing, because he was so humble and so thankful that, you know, we provided a platform for him to live out his dream. And it really was. Like, it was like talking to a kid. It wasn't like talking to this world-class superstar, legendary artist. It was like talking to a kid that finally got his chance to do what he's always wanted to do. So that moment, and him coming back without, unbeknownst to us, he flew into Ottawa to watch the Shooting Stars play against Hamilton in 2022, just as a fan. That was probably the coolest moment, where I kind of walked into the arena a few hours before the game, and then he was just sitting there like, wow. Like, that to me was a commitment that he didn't have to make, that he made to the league, but, you know, to the team and to his teammates. So yeah, it was a very cool experience, and hopefully one day, you know, he'll return as a fan and continue to support what we're doing. But yeah, it was cool that he was part of our journey, and we were part of his as well.
Yeah, maybe bring him on for a halftime show or something like that.
Don't you worry about it.
All right, well, that concludes the longest rapid fire sequence in all of media today, Target Time. All right, Mike, we appreciate all your time today. This has been I could talk to you for hours. There's so many questions that Taylor and I had. We're really looking forward to having you on, and we hope to have you on again. And congratulations on all the success so far. And I know myself and Taylor are really looking forward to season 6.
Awesome, guys. Thanks for having me on. I know I talk a lot, so thanks for dealing with me, and I'm happy to do it again anytime.
Well, it started with a bit of a cheap shot, Taylor, that was unintended. But in the end, it ended up being a really good interview. I'm glad that you were professional enough to not let that affect your performance. You held back on trying to get back at me, and I truly appreciate that. It really speaks to your professionalism, even though I do think that your contribution of the name of this podcast might be the biggest milestone of the entire podcast.
Here I am looking forward to another great chat with my good friend Joey, a great guest coming on. And he starts it off by saying, yeah, I think the biggest and maybe the only contribution you've made is, coming up with the name of the show. Maybe that's true, but at least say that behind my back, not to my face. My goodness. At least Mike kind of came to my defense a little bit, like, oh, yeah. Wow. He was even taken aback. So luckily I had him on my side, but that's okay. That's
You've got
fair.
a good friend in Mike Morreale.
Yeah, there you go. I got one at least, but no. To be fair though, I mean, these amazing graphics that we have that we post on social media and the logo and all that fun stuff, I can't take any credit for that. It is all Joey. He's the mastermind behind all that and the editing. So he's the host of the show, and he's been doing a billion other things for the show. So honestly, your comment really wasn't that far off, so I wasn't really that offended. But I'm gonna bug you about it anyways.
This is the best part. Now you're throwing all that stuff out, like you're propping your argument to see, yeah, he did take a shot at me. It's a team effort, Taylor. We do this together, because without you here and me here, we don't have a show. We don't have co-hosts. The thoughtful conversation, which is truly important. All the other stuff's just the fun stuff to try and dress it up a little bit to make us look even a little bit more professional than we already are, which is barely.
That is true. That is very true. But, target time is always a really fun time with whatever guests we have. And of course, I like how you were honest with them and said, like, yeah, this, it's supposed to be kind of rapid fire, but it never ends up being rapid fire. Like the target time could end up be a 3-hour segment, but whatever, it's a good time. But
isn't that kind of fitting though, Taylor? I thought about this because it's target time. Yes, they're rapid fire questions, but there's no time in target time. That's the ironic thing. Right? So technically it's very on brand for this sport and this league that we cover to have a target time that lasts longer than your typical rapid fire, because at the end of the day, you just got to win. You got to get your best out there. There is you can't just lay back. You got to go and get the best you can, right? You got to go out there and win. And we do that every time. Every single time, Taylor.
It's like we planned it like that. There you go. That's a good argument. Not bad.
Say we did.
Bad at all.
Say we did. But that was, we hit him with some good questions. I have to say, I admire his ability to answer a lot of those very candidly. He had a lot of fun with it, it seemed. So we found out.
4 downs. Any CFL legend, signing off on 4 downs. I mean, we kind of backed him into a corner a little bit on that one, but I was like, wow, okay. That's an interesting take. But I mean, I get it. He does have to have his basketball hat on now, so that was a fair statement to make. But also, too, the Mount Rushmore of CFL receivers, I was like, okay, let's see what he has to say here. And, he rattled off. It was a big Mount Rushmore, but, fair. You don't want to leave anyone hanging. And, cool to see him who he said he'd love to play, have as a quarterback with Dave Dickinson.
Yeah,
and Jeff Garcia, another Stampeders legend. So
I also love how he
just, for sure.
I love how he just took your Mount Rushmore question and made his own bigger Mount Rushmore. Like that's Mike Morreale in a T, right? You see something, like, I'm going to make it bigger and better, apparently. So that was, that was good. And he dropped a lot of names, man. There were some deep cuts for the, for the fans that have been around that are also CFL fans and have been, around longer maybe than you and I. There's some deep cut names in there that he brought up, a little bit of nostalgia for the football fans that are on the podcast. But of course, the basketball stuff was great. We kind of knew this, but, to hear from the league perspective of just how impactful last year was in Winnipeg and just the excitement surrounding it now that, the belief this wasn't just a one-time, anomaly thing. There seems to be a true sense of excitement. And it does feel a little bit like, the Sea Bears and the welcoming and the, what's what I'm looking for, the engagement of the fans has really kind of opened doors elsewhere, right? Like I think now what the Sea Bears pulled off and its fans pulled off last year at Canada Life Center, it's starting to expand to other teams across the league of just, where can this league go? Where is the ceiling for this league? And we're still figuring it out. But, a lot of respect for Winnipeg and, as the struggles that he talked about of the team getting here, it was kind of cool to hear his perspective and get that little inside look of, what those conversations were like before anybody even knew Winnipeg was on the radar, and probably a lot of fans even knew about this league.
And getting this league to a point, this is what Mike was saying, to a point where maybe these teams could be building their own kind of mid-sized arenas and stuff. It's like, oh, okay, interesting. So, I mean, this league, as great as it is right now, they're not patting themselves on the back. Like, they're shooting for the stars. And I mean, the sport, we've talked about all the time, just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger in this country. That, I don't think those are crazy aspirations at all. No, it's not going to happen in the next 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe even 10 years. But down the line, this league is only going to get bigger and better. And it was cool to hear him talk about how kind of proud he is that he's one of the people who started this thing out, and it's going to be interesting to see how this thing continues to evolve over the years and decades and whatnot. So, it was really kind of cool to get that insight. But Joey, since we did just have a former pro football player on the show, and the Super Bowl, it's a pretty big deal, just happened the other day. I feel like we just got to spend a second here just talking about that game, because there was so much that happened on the field, off the field. If you're a Swiftie or not, I don't even know. What were your thoughts on Super Bowl Sunday? Because that was quite the spectacle and quite the finish.
You know what? Sure. Patrick Mahomes, third Super Bowl, starts getting in that conversation. Taylor Swift being there, having the real relationship on the field moment. It kind of feels like a Taylor Swift song uncovering as we speak. We're seeing it happen in real time with Travis Kelce. But that was Usher's Super Bowl. That halftime performance, I'm not a big halftime performance guy. I thought last year's was cool with, Eminem and Dr. Dre, but holy man, did that Usher halftime show just spark massive nostalgia. And did he not kill it? Like, that dude is ageless. And then he's on there in the rollerblade or the roller skates. I don't even know. That was impressive. I don't know how he got that. That was
impressive.
That outfit changed so quick on top of putting on roller skates securely. That was insane. But and then all the stars that came out, like Ludacris coming out. I mean, come on, man. Like, in high school, that's my guy, right? Ludacris. And then, Alicia Keys making an appearance. Like, I thought there's the picture perfect halftime Super Bowl performer. Like, not like even Usher. Like, I don't even remember the last time I listened to Usher, but just, like the way he commands the crowd, like his dancing, the singing. I was just like, I was blown away at just how perfect that was pulled off. But from the halftime show to the ending, because the first half kind of, I feel like Usher is really what inspired that second half, because the first half was kind of like, I don't know. But then the second half, that's when all the drama unfolded, right? And it ended up being a great game. I was kind of rooting for Brock Purdy to win. I was rooting for that. I'm a Broncos fan, so I don't really care for the Chiefs to win. But at the end of the day, I love storylines, and I think you were due for a good one regardless. Travis Kelce, Taylor Swift aside, looking at the quarterbacks, you either had Brock Purdy, who was going to, come in as a minimum wage quarterback and win a Super Bowl, or, but he still went toe to toe with Patrick Mahomes, who's now in that conversation. And now he's going to have to follow this for a number of years, because now he's in the Brady chase for real, right? You've got 3, and now you've got plenty of tread left. I think, what is he, like 28? So he's got plenty of tread left in terms of, ability to win some more, especially if he can play as long as Tom Brady did. So, it was a good storyline one for me. What did you think?
Well, I learned something new today. I did not know Joey Slattery's a big Usher guy. That's that's like news to me. Yeah,
that's.
I forgot. Like, going into it, I was like, man, I can name maybe one Usher song, but then he was performing. It's like, oh man, like I know all these songs. He's got some bangers. I forgot about Usher. So,
dude,
there you go.
That album alone, he almost hit all of them. That was the other thing. Like, how many songs can you fit? Like, I understand it's an extended halftime, but like, he hit basically all the hits. I was shocked. Like, I was just like, every time I was like, oh, because I think he'd put one and I'd be like, oh, like that's like, cool. But like, I would have put in another song, and then that song ends up playing, and I was like, this is insane. Like, and I feel like anybody who is under the age of, I don't know, over the age of like 25, maybe 30, let's say, like when he started the My Boo with Alicia Keys, you're just like, oh my goodness, man. Like, My Boo. You're singing along, My Boo. Oh man, I was into it.
Speaking of your boo, though, speaking of your boo, as a Broncos fan, John Elway, the legend himself.
Yeah.
He's on the field as the Chiefs after they win the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And he's the one. He's the legend with the trophy, making his way down the line up to the stage and giving the trophy to the team. I'm not a Broncos fan, but I thought that was extremely weird and bizarre and super random.
The other thing, it was a little random.
Because they're a division rival, for those that don't know, the Broncos and the Chiefs.
But even beyond that, I was like, I don't really know the tie to John Elway to Las Vegas. Like, I feel like there's certain things that would tie to it. But also, I hate the Super Bowl trophy presentation. It is the worst one in sports. It's too fabricated. They try to build up the
owner
drama.
Speaking first.
Well, even just like the presentation, they have players walking it down and handing it off, and the players are touching it on the way down. It's just like, I don't know. It's too fabricated. They're trying to make it more epic than it is. The NFL is a sport that doesn't need to try to be epic. It's so weird. I hate it. I hate everything about it. I hate the walk up to it. I hate how old players are passing it off. I appreciate that they're trying to honor those that have won it in the past and the Hall of Famers and whatever. But yeah, and then it goes up to the stage where it's the owner who no one knows, unless you're from that, you cheer for that team, and even then you don't know them that well, and then it's general manager, coach before it finally gets to the quarterback. It's like, man, hockey does it perfect. It is the best trophy presentation. The cup comes out. It's brought out by a dude whose sole job is taking care of the trophy in white gloves. It's got its own epic thing to it. Walking out on the carpet, goes on the table that has the nice skirt on it. Beautiful presentation. You get to boo the commissioner a little bit. You get to take out your frustration for the year of stupid decisions, whatever that you didn't agree with leading up to it. And then he hands it over to the captain. You have a quarterback. You have a position that is clearly the captain without being a captain position in all of sports. No one's going to argue you have to give it to anybody else. You call the quarterback up, you hand it over to them, they lift it up, the confetti goes, whatever. But I just hate that trophy presentation. And yes, having John Elway giving it to the Chiefs was a little bit hard as well. But I just, every year I tweet about it. I just hate that trophy presentation. Of everything the NFL does well, that's not one.
Well, if the Winnipeg Sea Bears win the CEBL championship this year, we'll see who gets the trophy first. I don't know. Will it be David Asper? Will he hand it off to Teddy first or Mike Taylor? I don't know. We'll see. That'll be something to monitor this year if they're able to pull it off. Just trying to come full circle. Trying to find a Sea Bears connection somehow to our Usher / trophy /
We should lobby for it.
That was the best I could do.
No, that was a good full circle. It was a good segue. And I think we should actually lobby the league and Mike Morreale, get him back on here, grill him really hard on, what a good trophy presentation is, the elements needed, and force him to make that decision that he's got to give it to the players first. I think that's within our capacity of our roles here as third party, program that watches the league. I think we have full autonomy to do that.
Absolutely. Why not? Mike, once you do the show once, then you're locked in, lifetime contract. They don't know that at first, of course, but so we'll get Mike back on and we'll grill him about that for sure. Yeah,
and I think that they got to know our egos are pretty high now at this point, and I think that's very deservingly so. I think we're both two very egotistical people that put ourselves a little higher than we should be, and we're going to put that in full practice because it's our show.
Well, that was me until you insulted me at the top of the interview. So now my ego's been checked down quite a few notches. But it'll, give me a couple of days. I'll build it back up. But we'll see.
We'll get through this, Taylor. This is our first bump in the road, our first fight, if you will.
Yeah, we'll get some couples counseling or something. We'll figure it out. But
yeah, you got a busy day though. We should wrap. This has been a great podcast, and sorry if it ran a little long, but if you're still here, thanks for sticking with us. I hope you enjoyed the show. We got plenty more coming up. Keep an eye out on our social medias at Joey Slattery TV, at Taylor Allen 31, just like Reggie Miller, his favorite player. That's how I remember. But yes, keep an eye on us. We'll let you know as the episodes are coming up. Taylor, great work as always. Always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you for listening to the Target Score Weekly podcast. To stay up to date with Winnipeg Sea Bears and CEBL news, as well as future episode releases, follow Joey and Taylor on Twitter and Instagram at TaylorAllen31 and at Joey Slattery TV. And wherever you're getting the podcast, be sure to subscribe to never miss an episode.